In a remote castle on the outskirts of the city of Kushin, a group of warriors was walking through its dark halls. One of them wondered if the information they had was wrong, to which his companion replied, confirming it was from Lord Cassius, and therefore it should be correct. Amidst his confusion, the other man expressed his surprise at not being able to see any magical beasts, adding that he couldn't even see a single ant. His companion replied that the reason might be the spread of a rumor about Lord Nagi's arrival, which the other man agreed with, considering it to be perfectly logical in this situation. While roaming, the men discovered a strange place, and they wondered about its nature and whether it was old, especially since it wasn't on the map. Meanwhile, one of them pointed to an exit and stairs leading up. Another man suggested sending someone to check the suspicious place, which angered Lord Nagi, who angrily explained that the upper floor was supposed to be handled by the Ilnian gang. Nagi then firmly pointed to their destination, announcing they would head there, and ordered the man who suggested checking to go first, who expressed his surprise at the command. Nagi simply repeated his order sharply and angrily, asking him if he had to say it again. The man immediately complied and went forward, only to discover that the place was completely empty, and he informed his master Nagi of this. But suddenly and unexpectedly, fierce magical beasts resembling wolves with red eyes appeared and attacked them. The beasts advanced towards Nagi and his group, then suddenly rushed at them, terrifying Nagi. Their misfortune didn't stop there, as all the doors and exits in the place were sealed, leaving them trapped to face the beasts. The men were shocked and stunned, surrounded by a large number of beasts, prompting one of them to shout anxiously, asking what they should do. Nagi reprimanded him, saying that if they wanted to live, they had to fight. He then yelled at his men, calling them fools, and ordered them to go out and confront the beasts. A fierce battle broke out, and the men fell one by one to the sharp fangs of the savage beasts. Just as Nagi was about to meet his end, someone killed the beast that was about to kill him. A new person suddenly appeared and mocked him, asking if he saw himself as a damsel in distress. The surviving man looked up to see the arrival of Lord Lanson, and expressed that his timing was perfect for saving him. With full confidence, Lord Lanson told Nagi to watch him closely as he fought. With superb skill befitting a sword master, Lanson set off to fight the fierce beasts. With his glowing weapon, he easily decapitated one of the beasts. The rest of the beasts pounced on him like a pack. He finished them all off in the blink of an eye, one after another. The other men stood in a state of shock and awe. Lansing stood over the scattered corpses of the beasts. Nagi expressed his deep admiration for Lord Lansing's indescribable power, asserting that sword masters are on a completely different level. As Nagi watched him from a distance, he wondered what kind of reward Count Cassius would give Lanson for this achievement. Then Nagi spoke bitterly, telling Lanson he could have handled the whole thing by himself. Lanson replied coldly, saying that despite Nagi's great speaking skills, his swordsmanship was terrible and advised him to train harder if he wanted to become stronger. Nagi answered with determination, assuring him he would do just that. The scene then shifts to the ruins of Ilnian in the city of Kushin, where a man greeted asking him why he was late. Lanson apologized, explaining that something had come up. The man told him worriedly that Count Cassius had arrived some time ago, and that the situation was not good. When Lanson asked what happened, the man explained that the Count had taken the children and left him a scroll. Lanson opened the scroll to find an order to kill someone named Dolkosh. The man who brought the message was shocked when he heard its contents. The target's identity was revealed. It was Blood Count Dolkosh, a powerful true blood vampire and a sword master who ruled the city of Kasho, while the city of Kushin was under the control of Count Cassius. The city of Kasho was run by Blood Count Dolkosh, and the two were always at odds. As a result of this conflict, Lanson and his companions were forced to do all sorts of dirty work to get support from Cassius. The man lamented their situation, explaining that all Lord Lanson wanted was to escape with the children and live in peace, and he cursed the Count whom he had been loyal to for about 10 years. The man tried to stop Lanson from going, reminding him that Dolkosh was a true blood vampire, but Lanson replied firmly that he had no reason to live if not with his siblings, the children. The man said to Lanson in astonishment that he had just returned, then asked him where he was going in this state. With Lanson insisting on moving immediately because the children had been taken, the man warned him sternly of the danger, explaining that Dolkosh had countless expert or even stronger vampires under his command. Lanson insisted that his request was an order for Lord Balshan. After a moment of hesitation, Balshan reluctantly agreed. Lansen explained that he wanted Lord Balshan to stay behind and take care of their siblings and promised with a confident smile that he would surely win and come back to fix everything. As Lansen and his group moved away, Balshan clenched his fist tightly, deciding to himself that he could not obey this order this time. Then the scene flashes back in time, specifically to March 11th of the Continental 1337 in the Barua Kingdom. There, the Queen of the Barua Kingdom was ordering the Knight Commander Balshan to take Lansen and leave while she would stay behind to guard the place. Balshan refused the order, insisting he would stay to protect her until the end. But the Queen insisted, explaining that what he must protect now was not her, but the lineage of the Barua Kingdom. Balshan couldn't refuse the Queen's request. The Queen then turned to her son, the second prince, and asked him to listen to her carefully and to survive no matter what. She told him that the destiny of the women of the Barua family was to preserve the royal bloodline for future generations, and that he too must fulfill his duty to the royal family. The crying little prince refused to escape alone, so his mother placed a necklace around his neck, assuring him that it would surely help him. She pleaded with him to revive the Barua royal family. Faced with this scene, Balshan was moved by the Queen's sacrifice, and the Knight Commander Balshan swore that he would serve His Highness the Prince with his life. From Balshan's perspective, he recalls the tragic events where the capital burned, and he failed to protect the king and queen, only managing to escape with the second prince in his arms. That day was the prince's 13th birthday. The prince who had witnessed the murder of his parents and brother merely stared at the burning sky in silence. Thus, the 500-year-old Knight Kingdom of Barua was destroyed. Balshan recalls how they avoided the Empire soldiers and reached the designated escape route, their group consisting of about 20 knights accompanying the young lord and lady, the last of the Marquis family. By April 1st, they successfully crossed the Moxam border and hid aboard a ship heading from Gloryland to Roverland amidst a fierce storm. On August 23rd of the same year, they arrived in Roverland, a lawless land where criminals and fugitives gathered. Balshan concludes his narrative by noting that 2 months have passed since their arrival in the city of Kushan, and that many knights died on the way, leaving only 12 of them, including himself. Balshan continues his recollection, explaining that those he must protect are His Highness the Second Prince Lansen, the only legitimate heir now, in addition to the last heirs of the dukes, marquises, and counts. And he vows to protect them no matter the cost, even if shame and misery await them. The scene shifts to the city of Cassio inside the castle of Blood Count Dulkosh. There, Balshan is seen fighting, muttering to himself to hold on a little longer, praying that His Highness, Lansen, is safe. Balshan reaches the dark throne room, and upon entering the hall, he finds the bodies of the warriors who accompanied Lansen on the floor. Then he saw Dulkosh, stained with blood and a sword embedded in his heart. Balshan arrives at the scene, calling out for Lansen in alarm. He finds him severely wounded, who tells him with a faint smile that it's all over. Balshan is shocked, wondering if the lineage of the Barua Kingdom, their promises of a happy future, and all their struggles and hopes would really end this way. But he refuses to give up, asserting that he cannot let it end like this. Despite his breakdown, Balshan gets up and carries the injured Lansen, determined that he must save him. 3 years later, the scene returns to the ruins of Ilnian in the city of Kushan. The place was quiet and children were playing happily together. Balshan calls out to Lansen, who was on top of a house, fixing a roof. Lansing feels happy to see that Balshan has returned unharmed. As Lansing was climbing down the ladder, his feet slipped and he fell to the ground. Balshan worriedly asks Lansing if he is okay, and Lansing replies that he is and asks what the Count said. Balshan tells him the answer was the same as always, that they should wait another month. Lansing accepts this, saying they can manage for now and will ask again next month. Balchayon scolds Lansing for doing such hard work, but Lansing replies that he can't make the children do it. Balchayon points out that these children have grown up now, but Lansen insists he will protect them no matter how much they grow. Balchayon sighs, calling Lansen by the name Elric, and says he knows what Lansen will repeat as usual. Lansen correctly guesses that Balchayon was going to say, "If only I had an elixir," which Balchayon confirms angrily. It is explained that the elixir is the medicine of life, an ancient and miraculous potion that cannot be replicated with modern magic, and it is rumored to have been found in the Ilnian dungeon 200 years ago. Lansen dismisses the idea of the elixir with contempt, calling it just an old wives' tale. He then wonders dismissively what's wrong with him, asserting that he faces no major difficulties in his daily life. Faced with his indifference, Balshan suggests they drop the subject. However, Balshan admits that a miracle like the one that happened to him in the past might not happen again. Suddenly, children rush towards them in a panic shouting, "Master," and warn him to be careful. In a swift motion, Lansen raises his armored arm to block a piece of wood heading towards him. He then turns to them with a smile and tells them he has just finished fixing the roof and doesn't want it to get damaged again. Lansen approaches one of the boys and hands him the wooden sword, advising him never to let go of his sword next time no matter what. The boy replies in confusion that he was holding it tightly. Lansen then starts teaching him the correct way, explaining that it requires more than just a tight grip. He must support his body with his legs and distribute his center of gravity throughout his entire body. He then asks him to imagine his opponent in his mind. As soon as Lansen starts to concentrate, vivid memories of his bloody battle against Count Dolkosh flash through his mind. The Count lands a powerful blow on him, but the other manages to block it. He recalls how having someone to protect gave him the strength to fight and his insistence that he could not die because he had things he must protect. The Count lunged forward with a swift step and with a decisive move severed Lansen's arm. Unfazed by the pain, Lansen did not retreat and lunged forward, aiming his strike at the Count's neck. At the peak of his flashback, he unleashes his power and delivers a fierce blow to the wooden training dummy, slicing it in half. Balshan and the children stand in shock. Balshan muttering, "Lansen." While one of the children shouts that the master has broken the wooden horse, Lansen snaps out of his trance, looking confused, and apologizes to them, saying he only meant to show them the way, but accidentally used too much force and broke the dummy, promising he will fix it later. Meanwhile, another child arrives running in terror, calling for Master Lansen to tell him something terrible has happened. He explains that it's about Daisy and Cyclone. Immediately, Lansen's expression turns grimly serious as he gets a bad feeling. Lansen rushes towards one of the buildings, thinking that the thick smell of blood he detects is too strong to be from a simple children's squabble. He bursts into the place calling their names, only to find a young man and a girl engaged in a violent real sword fight. It turns out the red-haired girl is Daisy from the Ilnian family, and the blue-haired young man is Cyclone from the same family. Suddenly, Nagi, Count Cassius' subordinate, appears, greeting Lansen and mocking his long absence. Lansen asks sharply what's going on, to which Nagi replies with a strained smile that he was conducting an interview. Lansen repeats the word interview in disbelief, and Nagi explains he was testing Daisy and Cyclone, and if they showed some promise, he was thinking of taking them on as his direct followers. He then orders the two to step aside. Lansen becomes furious and asks Nagi who he thinks he is to try and mix his lowly blood with anyone. Nagi retorts mockingly that joining him as the lowest of followers would be better than staying under a failure who has lost his limbs. Lansen asks if Count Cassius knows about this, but Nagi scoffs at the question, explaining that Lansen doesn't understand the situation and that someone as busy as the Count doesn't care about every little thing. Lansen deduces that Nagi came on his own, knowing this area belongs to their family. Nagi confirms he came fully aware of the situation, mentioning a rumor that the great swordmaster Lansen lost his limbs because of a bunch of kids. Lansen is angered by the way Nagi is speaking to him. Nagi slyly wonders if Lansen can protect them with his current body. Lansen sternly warns him not to touch the children and to leave quietly, or he will die by his hand. Nagi smiles dismissively as if doubting Lansen's ability to carry out his threat. But before he can finish his sentence, Lansen launches a swift attack. Nagi's men block the attack with their swords. Surprised by Lansen's strength, which they classify as low-level expert rank, Lansen thinks to himself that they are no match for him and told them not to underestimate a swordmaster. Lansen unleashes his power in a fierce attack, defeating Nagi's men instantly. Nagi stands impressed by what he saw, clapping and saying he's still the same and that he's amazing, brother. Lansen replies that newbies these days know no fear. Nagi asks him not to be so harsh. As his opponent is just a rookie, Lansen notices that Nagi still holds a huge grudge against him, which Nagi initially denies before his expression turns dark and a sinister bloody aura surrounds him as he prepares to fight. Lansen realizes he can't prolong the fight in his current state and decides he must end it in a single blow. He launches a quick and surprising attack on Nagi, thinking he has caught him, but Nagi easily stops him using only the aura surrounding his body. From the force of the impact, Lansen's sword breaks, and Nagi asks him contemptuously why he looks so pathetic, revealing to him that his core has been completely shattered. Lansen is shocked, and Nagi continues his mockery, asking if Lansen thought he wouldn't be able to reach the higher ranks. He then tells him that this is why he insisted on the importance of becoming one of the bloodkin. Lansen looks around worriedly, wondering what he should do now. Nagi casts a terrifying glare at Daisy and Cyclone, who are trembling in fear, and threatens them by asking if he should kill them one by one. Lansen decides that if a fight to the death is inevitable, he must at least protect the children. Lansen pleads with Nagi to end it here, reminding him that there are children present. Nagi laughs out loud, disbelieving what he's hearing, and asks mockingly if Sword Master Lansen is now begging him. Lansen tells him he won't deny it, then drops his sword and kneels on the ground. Nagi replies that it won't be that easy then, and that he needs to warm up his body a bit. He then begins to beat Lansen mercilessly, delivering successive punches to his face and knocking him down, and lands a powerful kick. Nagi steps on the fallen Lansen, who weakly begs him to stop and apologizes. After a moment of thought, Nagi smiles cruelly and claims to be a soft-hearted person, and that this is enough for today. He then leaves the place, telling them he will see them again tomorrow. One of the children looks at their defeated master and asks in despair what they will do now. Lansen reassures them that it's okay as he was able to protect them. Later, Lansen asks Daisy and Cyclone why they did it and if they really wanted to become Nagi's kin. Cyclone apologizes to his master, while Daisy remains silent, refusing to speak, her red eyes staring defiantly. Daisy muttered a curse, and Lansen asks her in shock what she just said. Daisy retorts defiantly, asking what's stopping her from becoming a subordinate of Cassius, reminding him that he was once his subordinate too. Lansen asks her angrily if she really doesn't know the reason. He explains that Cassius is someone who wants to become a vampire out of greed, and because of him, their comrades and family died, while he himself ended up like this, pointing to his prosthetic limbs. He asks her incredulously if she still wants to serve him just to live by sucking blood. Daisy explodes in anger and screams at him that it's none of his business, asking if he's her father or something. She continues screaming through her tears that her life is her own to decide, and tells him to stop meddling in other people's affairs and just mind his own damn life. After venting her anger, she gets up and storms out of the room. Cyclone tries to calm her down, then turns to Lansing to tell him that Daisy didn't really mean what she said. He adds that he knows kneeling in such a situation requires great courage. He then notes that his master must be in a lot of pain and offers to go get a healing potion from Uncle Balshan. Lansen thanks him with a faint smile. At that moment, Balshan enters the room in a panic, asking Lansen if he's okay. Balshan tells him that a child named Lena came to him and told him that Daisy said Lansen and Nagi were fighting and that Lansen was injured. Then the child came to him for help. Lena realizes she has revealed Daisy's secret and exclaims that she'll be in big trouble if Daisy finds out. Balshan confirmed that Daisy had indeed done it. Lansen laughs at the situation, then thanks everyone for their concern. Balshan gives him the healing potion, and Lansen takes it, silently thanking Daisy. Later, Lansen sits alone and coughs violently. He sighs as he looks at his blood-stained prosthetic hand, thinking that if his core were intact, someone like Nagi would be no threat at all. But he quickly dismisses these thoughts, telling himself that protecting the children is all that matters now. However, he remains worried about Nagi's return the next day. Lansen realizes that, in the end, he might have no choice but to use that thing. He takes out the Barua royal family's necklace, thinking of selling it to fund the children's protection. He knows that treasures like the royal seal would be dangerous because the Empire would track them, so the necklace is the only thing that can be sold. Lansen looked at the Book of Fate and wondered why it was considered a royal treasure. He read in it about an event that occurred on March 17, 4673 according to the Rosiris calendar, where a secret church of a cult was filled with an ominous vow. Lansen is surprised by his ability to understand the ancient language written in the book. Suddenly, a powerful light shines from the book and the mark of the holy star appears. Then Lansen disappears from his room. Lansen suddenly finds himself running down a dark corridor, wondering how this happened when he was just reading the book moments ago. He realizes that what is happening is not an illusion, but reality. He recognizes the place as the Ilnian dungeon, but it looks brand new. He stops amidst a group of people wearing robes similar to his own, confused about who they are and what is happening. He hears someone report an intruder in the church, and the leader orders them to secure the elixir first. Lansen is shocked to hear the word elixir. He connects the events, the new Ilnian dungeon, the date mentioned in the book, and the legend that the elixir was discovered in the old Ilnian dungeon. He comes to the stunning conclusion that he has traveled back in time, 10,000 years into the past. He confirms that the opportunity is real and that the elixir is actually here. Meanwhile, one of the cult leaders confirms that the elixir is safe, and Lanson thinks that with it, he will regain everything he has lost. Lanson senses the presence of 12 people nearby and considers killing them all now and taking the elixir, but the cult leader issues an order to search for the intruder in pairs before making the offering. The leader begins to assign tasks, then calls out to someone named Serwos to go with Ranson to cover the northern passage. Lanson stands frozen in place, wondering how they know his name. He speculates that they recognized him as one of their past comrades, realizing that powerful magic related to the Holy Star caused this outcome, and wonders about the true nature of the Book of Fate. His assigned partner, Serwos, calls out to him, asking why he's standing there spaced out, and urges him to move. Lanson decides for now to play along to gather information and wait for the right opportunity. He then follows Serwis into the dark corridor. As they walk, they find a woman with golden hair in front of them. While exploring the corridor, Lanson and his partner Serwis are attacked by an intruder with yellow hair and a glowing purple sword who cuts Serwis in half. Lanson notices a strange transparent flash when his sword clashes with the attackers. Lanson manages to block the aggressor's attack and sees that his own sword is being damaged with each engagement. He notices that the attacker's sword is also damaged, commenting on its strange power. Lanson realizes this power is not just a normal sword aura and that something strange is happening, and he thinks about testing this power himself. Lanson notices frightened children hiding nearby. Behind the yellow-haired attacker, Lanson wonders why they are here. The attacker reveals herself as a blonde knight-ish and stands protectively in front of the children, scolding Lanson, questioning how he, as a knight, could side with a cult that kidnaps children, and accuses him of planning to use them as living sacrifices. For a moment, Lanson remembers his own children and their happy life before the rest of the cult members arrive at the fight, pretending to be ignorant of what's happening. One of the cult members asks him if Serwis fell to the intruder. But before the other can finish his sentence, Lanson turns and kills the cult members with a swift strike. The blonde knightess is stunned, so Lanson tells her they are on the same side and must fight together. 2 more cult members arrive and find that 3 of their members have been killed by the intruder so far, and one of them yells for the other to hurry and help Lanson. Lanson turns and beheads one of them. One cult member sees Lanson kill his comrade and accuses him of betrayal as he breathes his last. Lanson stands over the bodies and tells the knightess that thanks to her feigned fight, it was easy for him to kill them. She looks at him, confused, and clarifies that he was attacking her randomly, so she had no choice but to intervene to defeat him. He then tells her to keep helping him in this way. The cult leader Celtic arrives and sees the scene, commenting on how difficult it is to understand Lanson's character, then asks him directly if he has betrayed them. Celtic smiles sinisterly, saying that the souls of the 5 who died grieving from the betrayal are not bad at all, and that the chaos contained within the betrayal itself along with the soul of the noble knightess will make their master even more pleased. The blonde knightess realizes she is facing an advanced expert-level opponent and regrets not calling for support before coming here. The blonde knightess realized she was at a mid-level expert rank, and facing Celtic alone was impossible. She decided to initiate the attack first to give Lanson a chance to strike when an opening appeared in the opponent's defense. The knightess charged fiercely towards Celtic, and their swords clashed violently. But Celtic easily blocked her attack and kicked her forcefully, sending her flying backward. The knight is charged again and aimed a blow at him, but he easily dodged it. With a sinister smile, Celtic prepared to deliver another blow, leaving the knight is in shock at his immense power. At that crucial moment, surrounded by a blue aura, he moved with incredible speed. Lanson intervened, unleashing his storm technique and aimed his sword, slicing Celtic's neck. Celtic groaned in pain but managed to endure. The necklace Celtic was wearing lit up when he was hit. He looked at a glowing artifact on his robe, realizing with a sly smile that he would have died without it. The 2 fighters engaged in a fast-paced battle with Celtic attacking with his red aura while Lanson countered with his blue aura. Lanson found himself in a tough spot, admitting the situation was dangerous as he couldn't predict the path of Celtic's sword, and wondered how that woman had managed to hold out against him for so long. The blonde knightess appeared from behind Celtic and launched a surprise attack, but he managed to block it. The blonde knightess screamed at Lanson, asking what he was doing. Lanson was confused. She asked how a colored sword aura could be so weak despite being hard to predict. Celtic mocked him, saying that just having a colored aura meant nothing, calling him a novice swordsman who couldn't even read the heart of the sword. He then launched a fierce attack that made the knight scream in pain. Celtic turned to Lansing with eyes glowing with malice, bidding him farewell before delivering the final blow. Celtic's insult enraged Lansing, who remembered his past serving under Count Cassius and how he had reached the rank of swordmaster, considered a strategic weapon. As blood trickled from his mouth, Lansing challenged his opponent to see if his true power was also that of a novice. Lansing unleashed a new technique called Aura Thread. Celtic was utterly surprised, noticing that Lansing's power was completely different from before. Using fine blue aura threads, Lansing launched a complex attack, muttering to himself, mocking the description of him as a novice who couldn't read the heart of the sword. Celtic couldn't withstand this new power, and the sword threads severed his head, and he fell to the ground, dead. Lansing collapsed to the ground, coughing up blood. The blonde knightess sat in a state of shock and asked Lansing who he really was. But Lansing, panting from exhaustion, ignored her and moved towards Celtic's body, desperately hoping to find what he was looking for. Lansing reached his destination and found a small box containing the elixir, and with a triumphant smile, he declared he had finally found it. At that moment, the blonde knightess saw him and asked what he was doing. Before he could drink the entire elixir, Lansing suddenly collapsed to the ground, dropping the elixir from his hand, leaving the knightess in a state of confusion and amazement. Then an old pocket watch sank into the water, signaling the end of his journey into the past. In the present, Daisy was anxiously wondering where Lansing was, whom she called brother. Daisy felt deep regret and asked Balshan if he had seen Lansing, explaining that she desperately needed to apologize to him, but Balshan didn't know his whereabouts. Hoping to find him, Daisy went to Lansing's room, thinking he might have returned. But when she opened the door, she was violently shocked by what she saw. She found Lansing lying on the floor, unconscious and covered in blood, and she screamed his name and ran towards him. Later, as Lansing lay in his bed, Balshan asked Daisy to let him know when he woke up, and she assured him she would stay by his side. Daisy sat watching him, thinking sadly how he had been the strongest among them all, but had become weak because of them. She felt so ashamed that she wished for death every time something bad happened to him. Suddenly, Lansing woke up gasping, looking at his prosthetic hand in a panic, and remembering that he had only drunk half of the elixir. He sat up in bed, wondering if it had all been a dream, only to discover he was indeed back in his room. Daisy looked at him worriedly and asked what had happened, why he had suddenly disappeared and returned covered in blood. But Lansing just stared at her silently, prompting her to ask why he was looking at her so strangely. With a slight smile, he asked if she had just called him brother. Daisy's face turned red with embarrassment, and she denied it. But Lansing pointed out that her eyes were red and swollen, wondering if she had been crying. He then asked jokingly if she was that worried about him, to which she angrily admitted she was and asked if it was wrong to worry about him. Lansing thanked her and patted her on the head, and Daisy mumbled that she wasn't a child anymore. Lansing smiled, thinking how long it had been since he had teased her like that. Suddenly, he felt dizzy and almost fell. He groaned in pain, and Daisy rushed to help him, calling his name anxiously, but he reassured her it wasn't painful. Lansing touched his face, his eyes wide, realizing what had happened was not a dream, but real, and that he had thought one sip wouldn't be enough. Daisy noticed the change in his body, and his prosthetic parts began to fall off one by one. Lansing announced that he had returned, leaving Daisy in a state of complete shock, but his body couldn't handle the sudden change, and he collapsed to the ground again as Daisy called his name in terror. When Lansing awoke, he found the children gathered around him in awe, disbelieving that his limbs had grown back. Lansing opened his eyes to see Balshan, Daisy, and the others staring at him in shock. Balshan asked him how this miracle happened and what exactly befell him. Lansing calmly replied that he drank the elixir, which startled Balshan, who cried out, asking if he meant that legendary medicine, one sip of which cost more than $50,000. Lansing asked them to wait because he wanted to confirm something first. Lansing stood up, and Balshan anxiously asked if he was all right and able to move. Lansing reassured him, saying he was fine. And although he might need some rehabilitation, it was okay. He then asked Balshan to accompany him for a moment, to which the latter reluctantly agreed. Lansing led Balshan to an ancient stone altar, and told him he was sure there was another elixir on it. Balshan looked at the destroyed place and asked Lansing what happened, to which Lansing replied that he too couldn't believe the situation. Lansing explained that this was why he wanted to check. Lanson remembered that during his journey in the past, the guards were strangely concentrated in this place, and he concluded that this altar was the key to a secret room. As soon as he placed the key in it, a magical circle lit up, revealing a secret entrance. Both were astonished by what they saw. The room was a treasure trove filled with gold coins worth thousands of dollars. In addition to ancient artifacts, swords, shields, and magical tools, Balshan couldn't comprehend what was happening and asked Lanson how all of this, in addition to his regenerated limbs, could be explained. Lanson replied that he too couldn't believe it, then revealed the shocking truth that he had visited this place 10,000 years ago. Balshan was utterly shocked. Lanson confirmed at that moment that his time travel was real, and he realized that if the power of the artifacts he possessed wasn't for one-time use, and if he could return to the past again and again, he would be able to achieve anything. Lanson then turned to Balshan and told him there was something he had to do first. Meanwhile, Nagi was relaxed, believing this was the true life and wondering what kind of fun awaited him today. He decided to go see Lanson, whom he described as the wreck. But upon reaching the room's door, Nagi was surprised to see Lanson standing before him. Nagi asked him if he had come out to meet them himself, then wondered in shock how his arms and legs had returned. Nagi panicked and ordered his comrades to flee and inform their master that Lansing had regained his core. He ordered them to disperse and go as quickly as possible. But before they could escape, Lansing drew his sword and launched a swift and powerful attack on them. Before the attack struck Nagi, it split into two, hitting both his comrades as they tried to flee. Nagi looked on in shock, wondering how this could happen. Lansing used his aura threads and rushed towards him. Nagi regained his composure and scoffed at Lanson, noting that he was using aura threads and not a full aura blade, and concluded that this meant his core hadn't fully recovered yet. Lanson retorted defiantly, asking, "And what of it?" Lanson ordered Nagi to receive his attack, and Nagi arrogantly declared that he was no longer as he was 3 years ago, but was now blood kin to the Count and of noble class. Nagi boasted about his superior body and his regenerative ability that prevented him from dying, which grew stronger when combined with his vampire-like aura. With full confidence, Nagi unleashed his powerful red attack, believing he could defeat even a sword master. But the next moment, Nagi found himself in absolute shock. The attack avoided his sword, then bounced back at him and severed his head. His severed head fell to the ground, and his body began to evaporate like vampires when they are killed. Lanson thought to himself that although his core had recovered, he still needed to reassemble his scattered aura. Later during their discussion, Daisy asked Lanson if it was true that he had traveled to the past after drinking the elixir. Lanson confirmed her words, explaining that he had time-traveled using the royal treasure of the Ben-Rua family. Balshan asked him if he could return to the past again, to which Lanson replied that he didn't know as the treasure hadn't shown any reaction since then, and he didn't even understand how the books sent him to the past in the first place. A young woman named Sia Milan, heir to the Ilnian family, intervened, saying that if the treasure was an artifact from the Age of Magic, it might be possible. Lanson wondered how divine power could be contained in such a small thing. Daisy raised a logical question about the elixir discovered 200 years ago, pointing out that if Lanson had drunk it 10,000 years ago, it couldn't have been discovered at a more recent time. Lanson suddenly realized the truth. Concluding that the reason was that he had only drunk half of the elixir bottle before his return, Lanson asked Balshan if there were any records mentioning that only half of the elixir was found, to which he replied that he had never heard of the exact quantity found. Concluded that there was no way to know if the entire bottle was supposed to be discovered or if history had changed because he drank half of it, leading to only the remaining half being discovered. Sia commented that what was certain was that if he could return to the past again, his actions there could change the entire world. Sia asked Lanson what he wished to achieve if given this opportunity. After a moment of thought, Lanson declared that his first goal was to avenge his parents and siblings whom he lost overnight, and his second goal was to fulfill his duty as the last member of the royal Ben-Rua family. Lanson continued, explaining that his ultimate goal was to restore the Ben-Rua kingdom. But before that, Count Cassius must die. Lanson remembered how in the past he had believed that submitting to the Lord of Kushan would ensure the safety of his family, but he realized too late that happiness borrowed from others could never be safe. Sia Milan warned him that Count Cassius was a powerful adversary. He was already a sword master, and no one knew how powerful he had become after absorbing Dalkash's pure blood. Lanson insisted that this was not optional, as a madman like Cassius might do anything if he discovered that he had recovered. For this reason, he assured them that it was a battle he could not avoid. He then reminded them that the tax report due to the Count must be submitted within 3 weeks. and that they must settle this matter before that deadline. Lanson isolated himself to train alone, trying to master the swordsmanship style used by the cult leader 10,000 years ago. He recalled that harsh, unyielding style and that sharp, piercing aura. The cult leader's sarcastic words echoed in his mind that he couldn't even read the heart of the sword and that he was just a novice swordsman. But now Lanson understood the true meaning of those words. It wasn't about talking to the sword, but about him and the sword becoming one entity. With this new realization, Lanson became certain that the power he faced in the past was definitely not an ordinary aura. His training was interrupted by Daisy's arrival, shouting that something terrible had happened and that it concerned Count Cassius. Meanwhile, in the Count's castle, one of his men informed him that he had invited Lanson's family to the castle in 3 days. Count Cassius replied that he had waited long enough for the nobles of the Manhwa kingdom, and that the time had come to use them as sacrifices. Lanson and his companions gathered to discuss the sudden invitation that came 3 weeks before the tax report was due. Balshan wondered if the Count had realized that Lansing had recovered his body and killed Nagi, but Sia dismissed that, saying the Count would assume the rebels had done it. She explained that the problem wasn't that, but that this sudden invitation ruined their plan to assassinate him. She revealed that their only chance was to attack when the Count performed his rituals. When Lanson asked about these rituals, Sia explained that since his injury, the Count left the castle once a month to perform rituals alone. Daisy added that she saw Cassius men kidnapping children, and Sia confirmed that they were eradicating villages that couldn't pay taxes using the bodies of their people and children as sacrifices in those rituals. Lanson was shocked to hear that Cassius was preparing bodies and living sacrifices to submit to an unknown entity and realized that they must forget the Cassius they knew in the past. He lamented that many things had changed while he was helpless and injured. He asked Sia how she knew all this information. Sia calmly replied that she had her own intelligence network. Lansing worried about Sia, scolding her for going alone to such a dangerous city. Sia angrily interrupted him, reminding him that their plan had completely gone off track, but Balshan defended her, saying that she was 20 years old now and an adult. Daisy anxiously asked Lanson if he was truly capable of eliminating Cassius. Lanson firmly replied that he must do so and that he had a real chance with this sword in his hand. Balshan immediately recognized it, explaining that it was the king's sword. Lanson explained that this blade was made of silver steel that fell from the sky and was forged with aura, and that corrupted beings like vampires could not withstand it. Sia announced that she would trust him and jokingly added that if they failed, they could die together. Lanson was angered by her pessimistic words. After claiming she was joking, she returned to seriousness, saying they needed another way to kill the Count. Lanson concluded the discussion by saying that their current plan, despite its danger, was their only option for now. Then the scene shifts to a quiet village called Luera. The children were playing happily, comparing the sizes of the mushrooms they had gathered, and one of them ran excitedly, suggesting they measure them when they returned home. But suddenly, without warning, fire erupted in the village. The children stood in terror and bewilderment, wondering what was happening. The village was brutally attacked by soldiers wearing armor and skull-like faces who savagely massacred the villagers and placed the bodies they had killed in carts. The soldiers soon noticed the children, and orders were given not to let any of them escape. The terrified children were surrounded by the soldiers who advanced towards them. But before they could reach them, arrows suddenly flew, striking the soldiers. A mysterious man appeared and asked the children if they were okay. The little boy asked him who he was, and the man introduced himself as Rivera Pietro. The children whispered his name, and the little boy asked him in astonishment if he was a baron. Rivera told the children he would explain later, but the most important thing now was to get out of the village. The children refused to leave, screaming and crying, pointing out that their mothers were still there. Rivera realized that eliminating a few soldiers wouldn't stop this massacre, and he muttered regretfully that the Count had gone too far. Meanwhile, at the Count's castle, carts loaded with bodies arrived. A soldier informed his master that 116 bodies had arrived, a number exceeding what was required for that day. The Count appeared in his vampire-like form and ordered his men to leave, saying he would handle the rest himself. The Count thought that Lansing's children would arrive at the castle tomorrow, and with a sinister smile, he announced that the long-awaited moment had finally approached. The Count began performing his rituals, drawing strange energy from the bodies, but he suddenly felt something suspicious and pulled the cover off one of the carts. The Count was surprised as he was caught off guard by an unexpected attack. Returning to a previous scene, Sia was explaining her plan, saying that according to her information, the bodies from Luera village would be loaded onto carts that day. She asked Lansing to pretend to be a corpse and sneak into one of those carts. This way, he would be transported directly to the Count, and he had to suppress his energy until that moment, then strike him when he was unprepared. Indeed, Lansing found himself facing the Count, who was surprised to see him and mockingly asked what brought him without warning. Lansing realized it wouldn't be easy. The Count congratulated him on his recovery, wondering if he had found an elixir. At that moment, Lansing realized that strategy had taken him as far as it could, and now he had to fight and win. The Count prepared for battle, expressing his hope that Lansing would show him some magnificent despair. Lansing focused all his senses, feeling that he could now read the heart of the sword. Lansing launched a swift attack while the Count unleashed massive blows of red energy. Lansing narrowly dodged the attacks. The Count gave him no chance and rushed at him with terrifying speed, ending up in a fierce clash with Lansing, who tried to retreat again. Lansing gathered his sword aura, then unleashed a furious attack towards the Count. The Count admitted that Lansing's strike was impressive, and that if his aura had been a little weaker, his head would have flown off. He then added with a sly smile that this skill was what he expected from someone from the Manhwa kingdom. Lansing was surprised that the Count knew his identity, and the Count confirmed that he must be the second prince of Manhwa whose body was never found. The Count described Lansing as a rare discovery and told him that if he offered his precious soul as a sacrifice, he would surely be able to fulfill his heart's desire. In response, Lansing launched another attack, but the Count easily blocked it, saying his attempts were futile and his sword could not penetrate his aura. Lansing's eyes blazed with focus, and his blue energy clashed with the Count's red energy in a massive explosion. Elsewhere, Rivera Pietro had gathered his men, who asked him why this sudden summons. Rivera replied that he had received intelligence indicating that something extraordinary was about to happen. One of Rivera's men asked about the nature of the intelligence he received. Suddenly, the men saw a huge flash of energy on the horizon and wondered in terror what it was. They recognized the red blade's glow as Count Cassius' aura and wondered who was fighting him. Rivera looked through binoculars, wondering who dared to do such a bold thing. And when one of his men looked, he recognized the other fighter in shock, whispering the name, Lansing. The other men didn't believe it and wondered if Lansing had truly recovered. Rivera remembered Sia's warning that he was given his last chance, and that this chance would not be repeated. Sia urged Rivera to take his time and decide whether to seize the opportunity or let it go and reap lifelong regret. Meanwhile, Rivera was consumed by doubts, wondering if Lansing was truly capable of killing the Count. He thought that although they were a rebel army, the best they could do was save a few children, and joining Lansing now meant sacrificing all their lives. One of his men asked him if they would just stand by and watch. Rivera made his decision, announcing that they must do something, then implicitly apologized to his men for the danger he would expose them to. Back to the battle, Lansing and the Count were exchanging blows. Lansing was preparing to deliver another blow with all his might. Lansing shouted as he unleashed another attack. The Count was surprised by the attack, which managed to hit him, causing his neck to bleed. In a fit of rage, the Count cursed Lansing, who was barely holding himself together from exhaustion. The Count admitted, clutching his wound, that Lansing's swordsmanship was truly magnificent and that he might be able to penetrate his defense someday, but only if he could reach him first. Then the Count summoned an army of his vampire followers to attack Lansing. An army of vampires rushed towards Lansing. Lansing found himself surrounded by an army of vampires and felt frustrated because he had planned to face the Count alone after sneaking in among the corpses. Lansing realized their numbers were endless and that at this rate he would collapse from exhaustion before he could reach the Count. One of the vampires launched an attack towards Lansing, but he easily dodged it. Lansing resolved to quickly finish off these followers. But before one of them could reach him, a silver arrow pierced him. The vampires wondered in shock about the source of the aura-infused silver arrow. While the Count angrily wondered who dared to interfere, Rivera Pietro appeared holding his bow, and he was not alone. Salzarin also arrived, calling Lansing brother. Lansing was surprised to see Salzarin, then even more surprised by the arrival of Sia and Daisy and even Cyclone. Rivera's deputy led his knights into battle, declaring that all the scoundrels who wanted their deaths had gathered in one place and ordered his men to kill them all. While Sia managed the battle by issuing her instructions, Rivera fired his arrows precisely, and vampires fell one after another. Daisy and Cyclone bravely confronted the vampires. Lanson anxiously asked his companions why they came, fearing they would get hurt. Daisy replied, asking why he always tried to do everything alone, reminding him that they were adults now. She added that this was a battle they must all fight together. Salzarin confirmed her words and asked Lanson to focus only on the Count. Lanson looked at his companions and realized with a smile that this was not the time to treat them as helpless children. Lanson looked towards the Count and gathered his strength, gripping his sword tightly, determined to face the adversary he had to deal with. With a menacing smile, the Count declared that he would begin by tearing off Lanson's arm. The Count's hand transformed into a huge red claw, and he attacked with it. But Lanson countered the attack using a necklace that unleashed a powerful golden barrier. The barrier exploded, throwing the Count back, who looked in shock and astonishment, wondering what had just happened. The Count was stunned when he realized the explosion had taken his hand. Lanson shouted at him, explaining that it was the protection necklace. Lanson looked at the shattered necklace in his hand, explaining that it was an artifact he found in the ruins. And while he regretted breaking it, it served its purpose. Lanson explained that after an all-out attack, a gap always appears in the defense, and that gap was the perfect opportunity for his trump card, which he had not yet revealed. Lanson focused all his energy, uniting his heart with the heart of the sword, and unleashed a massive whirlwind of blue energy. The Count roared in anger, unleashing his red energy, vowing that Lansing would be the one to die here, then struck at the whirlwind. However, the whirlwind absorbed the attack without being affected. With the violent and continuous attack, Lansing managed to create a crack in the aura protecting the Count's neck. And through that gap, Lanson delivered his decisive blow. The Count fell to the ground, taking his last breath, wondering in bewilderment if what hit him was the soul blade. Lanson replied that he only tried to blend the ancient sword energy with the aura blade, and he too wondered if this was indeed the soul blade, the symbol of the Grandmaster. Suddenly, the Count's vampire followers were harmed and began to fall one after another. Rivera's men wondered in confusion what had suddenly afflicted them. Rivera realized that Lanson had indeed killed the Count. Rivera approached Lanson, disbelieving that the latter had actually defeated the Count. He told him that according to records, vampires who lose their master lose their minds for a day or two. When Lanson asked if they would return to normal after that, Rivera confirmed it, explaining that this was their chance to eliminate the remnants. Rivera offered to take care of the remaining vampires with his men by the end of the night, which Lanson immediately agreed to. Rivera stepped forward and thanked Lanson warmly, expressing his gratitude for giving them a chance to avenge their comrades. Lanson told him they were indebted to him and suggested they work together to make the city a better place to live. After that, Rivera revealed the Pietro family crest, explaining that he had planned to tell Lanson later, but events accelerated the matter. Rivera explained that his family was part of the Gloryland nobility 300 years ago. He then presented the crest to Lanson, declaring that he would serve him as his lord from that moment on. Later, Lanson spoke with Sia, who commented that she had expected Rivera to go as far as presenting his family crest. Lanson asked her if she knew Rivera well, to which she replied that she knew him to some extent, explaining that she obtained her information through his and his force's assistance. Lanson was shocked to learn that she had dangerously collaborated with Rivera's forces, but she insisted that she only provided them with a little help. Sia suggested that they leave the matter of dealing with the remaining vampires to Rivera and focus on finding evidence of the Count's evil deeds. She explained that the more they tarnished the Count's reputation, the more support they would get from the citizens. Lansing agreed with her, realizing that after Cassius' death, they needed the citizens' support to rule the city of Kushan. Immediately, they formed an investigation team, including representatives from merchants and citizens to gather evidence. During the investigation in the castle church, Sia commented that the place didn't seem special, which Lanson agreed with. Although they found a scary and unsettling stone statue, Sia pointed to Lanson, then asked him about the necklace he was wearing. Suddenly, the necklace Lanson had acquired in the past began to glow, but he wondered why it was glowing at that time. Lanson took out the Book of Fate, which also began to glow green just as it had before. Sia recognized the book and suggested that Lanson try to open it. Lanson strongly refused, fearing that he would be sent to the past again, explaining that if he disappeared now, many factions would rush to seize the area for themselves. Sia agreed with him and urged him to hide the book quickly. But before he could, the book opened on its own and revealed a text about the Lord of the Clear Sky who had returned with the cult's treasure. The royal seal lit up again, and in an instant, Lanson found himself back in the past again. He found himself sitting on a moving cart in a field, wondering where he was this time and noting that he was part of a group again. Lanson felt immense pressure from the man in the robe sitting in front of him, and he realized that he was much stronger than anyone he had met before. The man called him Ranson and asked if he had woken up, and Lanson thought to himself that this man was on a completely different level than the cult leader he had faced earlier. It wasn't just his powerful aura. The mana energy in the entire area was swirling around him, something incomprehensible even for a Grand Master. The man told him that he had met him by chance and taken him as his disciple, and Lansing realized that this was his role in this past, the disciple of this mysterious man. Then one of the escorts asked his master when he had taken this boy as a disciple, and he replied that the master himself had taken an interest in him and accepted him a week ago. The master confirmed the matter, explaining that he had indeed brought him a week ago, and wondered how strange this meeting was, as if divinely ordained. Lanson was puzzled by this man and his attitude, which was completely different from that of the cult members who treated him as one of them without concern. The man introduced himself as Grand Duke Lathena Celsius and explained that eliminating cult members had been his long-time wish. He then turned to Lanson, addressing him as Ranshin Van Roa and reminding him that he had become his disciple a week ago. He told him that they were now on their way to his castle where he would receive his teachings. Lanson wondered why the Duke was explaining the situation to him in such a gentle manner, while the Duke expressed his eagerness to achieve their aspirations together. Suddenly, a disturbing thought crossed Lanson's mind, and he wondered if the Duke had discovered his true identity, realizing that the whole matter was extremely strange. Although the Duke treated him with unusual gentleness, Lanson suspected that he might know something. Meanwhile, the other Lanson expressed his pride in accompanying his master on this journey. Lanson decided to test the Duke, asking him if he was truly sure of his decision, especially since he didn't even know who he truly was. The Duke agreed that the matter was indeed strange, but added that there was one thing for sure, which was that if what was happening now aligned with his goal, then perhaps this was something he had agreed to long ago. Lanson didn't understand what the Duke meant, and the Duke explained that he didn't know for sure and that it was just a feeling he had. Lanson stood silently, wondering about the meaning of the word feeling in this context. He felt that this situation was almost driving him crazy, and he wondered in confusion what on earth was happening. The cart continued on its way until they finally reached a massive castle made of glowing steel, and Lanson wondered how he ended up in this place and in this strange way. The Duke told Lanson that this was the City of Knights, glowing steel, where he resided. He explained to him that although he was a Grand Duke, he left most of the governing affairs to his servants while he spent his time teaching the younger generations. During their journey, Lanson realized that the Duke was skillfully teaching him about the customs and etiquette common in that ancient era. Thanks to that, Lanson gradually adapted to life in this time. Since he didn't know how to return to his world, he decided he had no choice but to focus on his present. Lanson thought that this era was clearly advanced in skills and swordsmanship, and he resolved to take advantage of his presence here to gain new experiences as he did before. Meanwhile, the Duke told him that he had another disciple in the castle they were heading to, describing him as a diligent boy with a high sense of justice, and that he would meet him soon. Lanson quietly agreed as he saw the towering castle before them. Upon their arrival, Lanson was greatly surprised when he saw the other disciple. It was the blonde Nidus he had met on his previous journey to the past, who also looked shocked to see him. The Duke noticed their reaction and asked them if they knew each other. The Nidus confirmed this and reminded her master of the man who helped her in the cult church about a year ago, pointing out that it was Lanson himself. The Duke remembered the story he had heard about a man who used a strange swordsmanship technique. The Duke expressed his pleasure that they already knew each other, then told the knight that Lansing would be her junior from now on and asked her, as his senior, to guide him well. The knightess was shocked by this request and wondered about him being her junior. The Duke justified his decision by saying that he had already taken Lanson as a disciple, but he had been very busy recently, and for this reason, she would be responsible for teaching him for the time being. After that, the Duke excused himself to enter first, explaining that he had matters to discuss with the sorcerers inside. Lanson couldn't believe what happened and thought how strange it was that they met again in this place and that she was the Grand Duke's disciple. Lanson tried to greet her and extend his hand, expressing his pleasure at their reunion, but she sharply interrupted him, asking what he thought he was doing. She then scolded him and asked if this was the proper way to greet someone of higher rank. Lanson was surprised by her strictness and discipline. The knight has seriously told him that regardless of the life he had lived so far, from this moment on, they were the master's only two disciples. She asked him if she was wrong, and Lansing had no choice but to admit that she was right. She continued that in order not to bring shame upon their master, they must pay attention to every action they take. She emphasized the need to always maintain an elegant appearance and proper conduct. She then began to scold him about the details of his appearance, asking when he had last polished his shoes, pointed out that his cloak was hanging crookedly, and criticized his messy hair. She concluded by saying that walking around with such an appearance made him no different from a bandit. The knight noticed Lansing glancing at her hair and angrily asked him why he kept looking at it. Lansing sarcastically wondered how she could lecture him with her hair styled like that. She then gently touched her hair, and Dorel became extremely flustered. She ran away in embarrassment, while the other knights whispered that she always found a flaw in others' actions, which made Lansing smile quietly. Later, in the training ground, the knight formally introduced herself as Yuden Serum. She explained that she was a knight of the Grand Duke's personal guard and a member of the Horizon Knight Squad. Yuden admitted that Lansin might be stronger than her, but she added that their master told her he was still unable to properly control his sword energy. She added that swordsmanship is something that must be learned through direct combat. Yuden drew her sword and invited Lansin to draw his, declaring that it was time for the senior colleague to teach her junior the fundamentals of swordsmanship. Lansin realized that this was the real reason they came to the training ground, but Yuden insisted that it had nothing to do with her venting her anger due to her previous embarrassment and asked him not to misunderstand. Lansin quietly agreed and drew his sword, thinking that words were unnecessary in front of swords.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.